She scrubbed harder when the wind picked up, her knuckles already raw from lye and ice water. Dust rolled off the hills in lazy waves, but she didn't flinch, didn't pause, didn't even squint. Her tiny fingers, cracked and blistered, gripped the brush with a steadiness far older than her years. The bristles had worn down, the handle smoothed from use, and still she dragged it across the sun-bleached boards of the long porch, like her life depended on it, because in a way, it did. Every inch of that house had absorbed her tears at one time or another. But not today. Today. She didn't cry. Today, she had to finish before someone came out yelling. Before someone noticed she hadn't gone back with the rest of the girls. If they did, the man inside might send her back to the home, and she couldn't survive being forgotten again. Her name was Ruthie. She was 8, maybe 9. No one counted birthdays anymore, not after your mama stopped visiting, not after the number of days mattered less than surviving them. She remembered her mother's lullaby more by rhythm than by words, and even that was fading. All that remained was the sting of cold mornings, the taste of sour porridge, and work that never ended when the pastor's wife sent her off to be useful on the ranch. Ruthie thought she'd learned to ride a fence line, maybe feed cattle, but she never touched a horse, not once. She swept. That's all they had her do. The other girls ran after 2 days. One crawled under the fence and made it clear to town. Another tried stealing biscuits and got dragged back in a wagon. Ruthie stayed not because she liked it, but because she knew if she ran again, no one would come looking next time. Behind her, the porch creaked. She froze, fingers whitening around the brush, her chin dropped low, eyes locking on a knot in one of the boards. It was shaped like a heart, and she stared at it like it might shield her from what she knew was coming. Bootsteps, slow, measured. Then, his voice, "You been at that same spot near 20 minutes, girl." Ruthie swallowed hard. "I'll do better, sir. You weren't even supposed to be here. Thought you were headed back with the others." I wasn't sent back." Silence stretched out between them, heavy and uncertain. Then the brush was gently taken from her hands. His shadow moved past her. "What's your name again?" She hesitated. "Ruthie." "Ruthie what?" "I don't know, sir." That silence again, longer this time, when she finally lifted her gaze. She saw him properly for the first time. Colt Townsend, the man who owned the ranch. He wasn't the type to linger or ask questions. He ran things with 2 hands and a constant frown. Someone whispered his name the morning the wagon dropped them off, said his wife died in a barn fire, said he hadn't spoken to God since, barely spoke to anyone. Now he stood over her, tired gray eyes narrowing like she was some stray mutt that wandered in without permission. "You eat today?" She shook her head. "No, sir." "Why not?" "I didn't want to take more than was mine." The men were still at the table. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Then he turned and walked inside. Ruthie didn't move, couldn't. The wind picked up again, dust in her mouth, in her hair, behind her eyes, but still, she didn't move. Then a sound. A plate placed softly beside her on the porch, a biscuit, still warm. She stared at it like it might disappear if she blinked. "You gonna eat or stare at it till it cools?" His voice came from inside the house. She grabbed it with both hands and whispered, "Thank you, sir." The door closed. That night, the bunkhouse was empty. The girls were gone. Ruthie curled up in a pile of hay in the toolshed, wrapped her arms around herself, and tried not to cry. She had stayed, but she didn't know yet what that meant. The next morning, she swept again. No one came out, not even the ranch hands. Around noon, she saw him on horseback near the far gate. He didn't wave, just looked at her once, and that was enough. 2 days passed, then 3. By the end of the week, she'd started feeding the chickens after the older ranch hand threw his back out. She learned to mend feed sacks, patched a fence rail with wire and stubborn fingers, even calmed a skittish mare that wouldn't let anyone near. Ruthie didn't flinch when the animal pawed the ground. She just stood quiet and whispered not words, exactly, just memory-made sound. Colt watched, not closely, but enough. One morning, she found boots by the shed door, not new, but not ruined. Her size, she slipped them on, tugged the laces tight, and tried not to smile. By the second week, Ruthie stirred the stove before the ranch hands arrived. She didn't eat unless Colt told her to, didn't rest unless he nodded, didn't speak unless spoken to. But when he did speak now, it wasn't always to give orders. "What do you dream about?" he asked one morning as she stared at the clouds before chores. She hesitated, then shrugged. "A bed with a quilt that smells like lavender." He nodded once, said nothing else. Then the rain came, cold, fierce, relentless. The shed leaked. Ruthie curled into a corner, tried humming that lullaby again, but it wouldn't come. She counted lightning strikes, curled tighter as thunder cracked the sky. Then the door creaked open. He stood there in the downpour, coat soaked, face unreadable. "You can't stay out here." She blinked up at him. "It's all right, sir." "It ain't. Get inside." She followed him in, past the kitchen, down a hall she'd never walked. A room, small, a bed, a quilt. She touched the edge like it might vanish. "It's clean," he said. "Keep it that way." "Yes, sir." He closed the door. Behind him, she didn't sleep at first, just lay still, hands tucked under her chin, listening to the storm. In the morning, a dress hung on the chair. It wasn't pretty, but it was hers. Colt never said she was staying, never said she was going. But each day passed, and she was still there. She cracked eggs with one hand, knew which hens pecked, caught a calf that slipped the pen by tackling it into the mud. The ranch hens laughed. Colt didn't. "You all right?" he asked, pulling her up by the back of her dress. "Just muddy, sir." "Next time, yell for help." "Yes, sir." That night, he left a tin of peppermint leaves by the sink. She used them for the bruises on her arm. Then came the letter. Colt read it twice. "Found her in the barn. They're sending someone," he said, "from the orphanage to collect you." Her stomach dropped, her hands stilled in the water. "They say you weren't properly placed, that you're not listed in any records." She nodded, stunned. "You want to go back?" She shook her head hard. "No, sir, I didn't think so." That night she heard him pacing the porch, heard boots creak, paper tear. By dawn, the letter was gone, ashes in the stove. When she came in for breakfast, he didn't say a word. But when a rail kicked loose later that day, and she ran to fix it, Colt picked her up in one arm and said quietly, "You're not going anywhere, Ruthie." She cried then, not loud, just enough for him to see. He said nothing, but the sky that evening bled red across the hills, and Ruthie knew change was coming. She always felt it before it happened. Inside, Colt stared into the fire. He hadn't told her the full truth. A marshal was coming, with paperwork, with proof, demanding her return. He burned the first letter, but another came, and this one was signed. She kept sweeping every morning, feeding, mending. She never asked for anything. All she ever wanted was to stay. He hadn't said yes, but he hadn't said no either. He watched her from the window, saw the way she clutched the rail, eyes sharp on the horizon like she expected it to vanish. He stepped out, winds kicking up. He said, "Feels like change," she murmured. "You're a mite too young to sound like an old woman." She almost smiled. "You feel it too. There's talk of a marshal coming. Says you weren't on the books. I was told to go. I didn't sneak on. I believe you. Do they want to take me back? They're going to try. What if I run? Then they'll chase. And next time, they'll never stop watching." She grew fierce. "I'll hide. Down in the gulch. Sleep in hay. They won't find me. You shouldn't have to hide, Ruthie." "Then what do we do?" He looked her straight in the eye. "We fight it. The right way. But I ain't yours." He pulled out a folded paper. "Name change. Guardianship request. I filed it yesterday. If Harrow signs it, they can't touch you. You want to keep me?" He nodded once. "But you don't even know me. I know you don't quit. I know you don't lie. I know you'd rather go hungry than take what ain't offered. That's more than I can say for most grown men. You'd be my guardian, if you'll have me." She ran to him, arms tight around his waist. He rested a hand on her back. The other hand clenched the second letter in his pocket, the one that said the marshal would arrive in 2 days. They had 48 hours. She scrubbed harder when the wind picked up. Dust rolled in off the hills in great sweeping gusts, catching on her lashes and whirling around her small frame, like some cruel spirit come to remind her this place would never be clean. But she didn't flinch, didn't pause, didn't squint. Her tiny fingers were raw, split at the tips from lye and cold water, and the wooden brush she dragged across the porch boards had worn smooth. Where her hand gripped it, day after day, every plank of that long, sun-bleached ranch house had known her tears once, slipped down her cheeks in silence as she bent low to scour away the filth others left behind. But not today. Today, she didn't cry. She needed to stay invisible, needed to be the quiet one, the small one, the one who worked so hard no one would think to ask what her name was. The man in the house had told her not to speak, not to show her face when company came by, that her place was here, outside, scrubbing. The brush slipped in her hand. She winced, but said nothing. Blood beaded in her palm, bright against the suds. She dipped her hand in the bucket and kept working. If she stopped now, he might notice. If he noticed, the door creaked open behind her. She didn't. She knew the rhythm of his boots, knew the heavy way they hit each step when he'd been drinking. Today they were lighter. Which was worse? He stepped out onto the porch, slow and deliberate, like he wanted her to know he was there. She gripped the brush tighter, kept her head bowed. Her hair fell like a curtain, shielding her face. "You missed a spot," he said. His voice always carried that smug laziness, like everything he touched was his, and anyone who breathed under his roof ought to be grateful. She moved her arm an inch to the right, not speaking. The man crouched beside her. She could smell the chew in his breath, sweet rot and salt. Her throat tightened. "You gonna cry again?" he asked, mock concern coating his words like syrup. She shook her head. He reached out, brushing her hair back. His touch lingered. She didn't flinch, not this time. She just looked down at the bubbles swirling in the pail, pretending she wasn't there, pretending she was somewhere else, anywhere else. His hand dropped away. "You keep it up," he said, straightening. "I might even let you sleep inside again." She didn't answer. He left. She waited until the door clicked shut. Then she exhaled. Slowly, quietly, the brush kept moving. Far across the prairie, a hawk cut across the sky, wings catching the last of the sunlight. She watched it for a moment, just a sliver of sky between boards, and let herself believe just for a breath that one day she'd fly to. But not today. Today, she scrubbed.